Hey friends, Graham here from the recordingrevolution.com, and this is going to be the first in a series of videos where I'm going to basically make an EP in front of you, working on an EP here in my home studio. And I wanted to give you an inside look at how I approach songwriting, producing, recording, and mixing, sort of give you a little bit of my workflow. Today, we're going to talk about Easy Drummer and really any virtual drummer. There's lots of good ones. I have a few. Today I'm picking Easy Drummer because it's one that a lot of people are familiar with, and to show you how to get more convincing performances out of a virtual drum plugin like this. Very common scenario, you don't have a drummer, you don't have access to a drummer, or maybe a space big enough to record drums, or maybe quiet enough where you're allowed to bang a drum kit in your apartment. I understand how it is. And so I decided to make an EP with just a virtual drummer this time, just to show you that it can be done. So today, let's talk about how to get good sounds out of Easy Drummer. First, I just want to give you a little bit of the drums that I've sort of set up in this session, and you're going to hear this song progress as we go through the next few videos. Right now, it's just drums. So here's a little intro. Okay. Got a little verse action with a couple of little fills in it. Right. Goes into the chorus here. Right, now we're on the ride cymbal, real nice. Goes to open hi-hat and interlude. Okay. And in verse 2, it goes to kind of floor tom action, changes up the vibe. And then halfway through, it kind of picks up a little bit. Yeah, like the kick drum gets a little more energetic there. Builds into a chorus. All right, you got some build into an outro. You got all kinds of stuff. And then you got a rock and crash on the final outro. All the way to the final hit. Okay? Why I showed you that is there's a variety of things going on. There's a variety of patterns, feels, dynamics, fills, simplicity, complexity, and all of those were chosen and built out by me almost by hand, tweaked by hand. I'm going to show you that in a minute, because they match the arrangement of the song, which you can't hear right now, so you don't have that benefit, but you will hear in the next few videos as I bring in the bass and the guitars and eventually the vocals. You're going to hear and see why the drums are doing what they're doing. Right now, they sound kind of random, but this is the first point of this simple video: is you should know in your head what you want the drums to do. Meaning you should have a good feel for the arrangement of the song. Otherwise, this Easy Drummer or any virtual drummer will do nothing for you if you don't know what you want the drums to do. You have to produce the drummer, the virtual drummer, and tell him or her what to do. And so you got to have that vision in your head of, I want the drums to be on this kind of feel in the verse, then push into the chorus here, maybe this kind of fill here. All of that has to be in your head first. For example, this little intro, very simple pattern here. That actually came from a very boring past. Let me flip over here, find the actual browser. I was in just sort of browsing through sort of their up-tempo rock vibe, and here's the pattern that actually built that out of. Pretty boring, right? Couple things here. One, an Easy Drummer, you can drag that pattern in here. double click it to open up the play style, which gives you a little bit of control at the beginning. And if you have Easy Drummer, I would take advantage of this first. You could take off the opening crash hit. You could move the power hand from a hi-hat to a ride if you wanted it to be a ride pattern. You could say on the kick drum, I want you to have a couple more hits or fewer hits in general. This can give you some, customization and personalization. And I'll try and start here if there's anything I can do. But generally, if the pattern is close, and I might, again, I want that snare to be a little busier or the hi-hat to be a little simpler, I'll tweak that here. Once I've got that tweaked, let's say I feel good about this performance, I would drag this literally into a MIDI track or virtual instrument track in my DAW. And now I have the MIDI information. And this is what you want to get convincing drum performances. You have to manually tweak these patterns. So I've got this. Which is really, if you open it up here in Pro Tools, you've got two hi-hat hits, this one and this one. This one has less velocity, and it's also a little bit different place on the hi-hat. So they're two different samples. And then you have just one kick and one snare. That's a slightly different velocity there. You can see more velocity, a little bit less velocity than the snare hit. Okay. And that's all you're working with to start. But what you can do now is either move the kick drum patterns around, the hits or the snare hits around. You can add or delete things. You can move them around so they're custom to what you want. What it looks like, what I ended up doing over here, if you open it up, is I kept the hi-hat about the same. That I pretty much didn't touch. The changes I made on this pattern were down here. I added this little hit, this little ghost note. So I added a snare, I added it on the 4, and then I brought the velocity way down, okay? In Pro Tools, you can do that by just dragging this up or down. Okay? So you can copy ones by holding Option and dragging it over. It's just MIDI data, right? So I'm saying, I wanted to go bump, bump, cat, cat, bump. So I want that little 4 hit right there. And then I don't want the repeat of bump, bump, cat. It's too boring. So I want to get rid of that first kick drum hit on the 1 and just keep the 1 on the 3. I like that. And then I wanted this little kind of roll into measure 4. Okay? And what I did was just copy 3 snare drum MIDI notes and kind of place them manually by hand in slip mode until it kind of felt natural in terms of the timing of it. And then I played with the velocity. I brought them down, obviously, because I imagine he's doing a little roll lighter on the snare. And also, all 3 of those hits won't be at the same velocity, so I might drag these down a little bit, these up. I've experimented with, is the first one louder because he's kind of hitting it harder the first time, or is the first one quieter as he rolls up? It just sort of depends on what the dynamic is. So you play with the placement, and you play with the velocity, and you play with adding or subtracting notes to make the pattern more interesting. And then it goes from there. I like that. Don't ba-ba. And that's going to play off the guitars, this. You'll hear that in a later video. So I wanted that rhythm, so I put the snare and the kick there. And then also imagine him hitting the hi-hat, but it opening for a bit, so there's just this open pause for 2 whole beats. So I added that sample just by copying a MIDI note, right? So I took away, I didn't have him hit that on the close hi-hat here, so I deleted it there because he can't hit the hi-hat 2 different ways at the same time. It's either open or it's closed. So you move that note down. You try to think it through realistically. What could his 2 hands do or her 2 hands do? And you just manually go through painstakingly each section of the song. That's all on the intro. Okay, so we go from this to this intro. Right? This is the key, and this is the point I want you to take away from today's video is, if you're using Easy Drummer, or if you're using Stephen Slate drums, or using any kind of drum program, Find the closest pattern that you hear in your head, of course. Find the fills that you hear in your head, of course. There's so many great pre-recorded patterns there. Take advantage of all that stuff in the browser, okay? But when you pull in the MIDI data, and I suggest you do that, pull it in so that you can then customize and edit every moment of the song to feel right. And sometimes you'll know that ahead of time, and other times you'll have to go ahead and lay down, scratch guitars or vocals or keys or bass, or start building out the song, and then go back and tweak the MIDI some more as you're like, you know what, that's a little too boring, or I like what we did here on the guitars. I really need to emphasize that on the snare. And you're just redirecting the drum performance as you go so it fits with the rest of the music. One final note I'll give you on this. Once you've got the patterns painstakingly mapped out the way you like, one suggestion would be is to randomize the actual drum hits because they might be totally perfect. So I will select all the MIDI. In Pro Tools, you can hit Option 0, or you can go to Event Operations, Quantize, Option or Alt 0. And what that does, and your DAW will have some similar window for your MIDI where I've got this randomized to 10%. So I check this box and I randomize it to at least 10%. And what that literally does is shift all the MIDI data randomly off of where it is by 10%. Sometimes it's early, sometimes it's late. And what that can give you is just a little bit of humanness, a little bit of variety. And I would say experiment with this, the feel of this. You could also push everything back a little bit. You can tweak the strength of the quantize. You can make it more of a swing feel. But even just randomizing it 10% can really give it a little bit more of a flawed performance, which keeps it more real and not so doggone robotic. And that's what you don't want. You don't want it to be robotic. You want it to have some feel and keep it close enough to the grid that it sounds in time, feels in time, but it's got a little bit of a human element. Hope that helps you. That's the only secret to getting great drum performances with Easy Drummer or virtual drummers. I'm going to show you more as we build this song, as we bring in the bass and then the guitars and vocals, and then how we put all this together. So watch it unfold, follow along if you want to. But in general, the idea here is you can do a lot with a little. You can do it at home, and we're going to build this out in front of you. If you like the video, let me know. Leave a comment below. Let me know how you are using Easy Drummer or your virtual drummer of choice. Any tips you've got, leave them here for the community below this video. Subscribe to the videos if you like them. That way you'll know when the next one is out. I will see you on the next video, my friend.